I have got the email, but files are extremely cluttered. It's not the way of sending files. It is the same problem that we faced in the last semester. So that is why I'm taking care of the G drive, etc. So it's very difficult to understand what is what. So there are 4 files together and I cannot understand what is exactly what. And if you check the files properly, then you will see that the group distribution template for spring 20, sorry, for 2021-22 is there, but not 2022. So when you send files, the naming and the way it has to be very proper, so that the person does not struggle with different files sent together and a couple of mails, back to back. It becomes very difficult to trace things like that.
I'm sending you the fresh mail, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm sending you the fresh mail.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that don't rush yourself. Properly, you make a folder, name the folders properly, so that so when something is being sent, so things have to be very clear. So what happens is the problem is that you in a very how do I say, like hastily you send back-to-back mails, 4, 5 mails, 6, 7 mails. So it becomes very, very difficult. So I just need one mail. I just asked you to send one document in the WhatsApp, right? Because I did not ask for other documents, and I did not need the other ones. So other ones, when I would have required, I would have told you separately. I just needed one single Excel sheet, but you sent me 4, 5, and then 2, 3 mails. No, so that becomes very difficult. Getting it?
Okay, ma'am. I'm sending you the docs file which contains the group distribution. That will be easier.
Yes, the current for the current batch.
Okay, I'm sending you.
Yes, and give a proper name, make a proper subject, attach the proper file, write a text in the email, so that things are extremely clear.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, I'm sending you. Yes.
All right. Okay, so if you take a look into the course structure, we are supposed to enter into one of the major frameworks or approaches in environmental social sciences largely, which is political ecology, right? So it's very, very exciting. It's an exciting field, but lots of literature on it, and in the last 20 years, scholarship has just flooded, so far as political ecology is concerned. And what is political ecology? Who can pursue political ecology? How to apply the political ecological lens to understand socio-ecological problems? So there are so many different views, opinions, and reflections on this. And of course, this is subjective. But the best thing is that, again, like environmental humanities, it is also very, very open-ended. So whatever your findings are, you can definitely, kind of include or incorporate that in this emerging field. So to start with, and it's very difficult actually, that how do I teach political ecology? It's not easy because so much of literature, and each person can pursue and can understand political ecology in his or her own ways. But there are few fundamental principles, or what I call the core tenets, of political ecology, like any other framework for that matter. There are some fundamental principles, there are some fundamental tenets, right? And these tenets are very specific to this particular subject or to this particular domain, and that is how it makes this particular domain a distinct domain, distinct from other domains. And these are the fundamental features or fundamental attributes of political ecology. But then it is extremely open-ended, subjective, qualitative, and many scientists are also applying political ecology, and sometimes, from stories, numbers are getting created. So a whole lot of things are taking place, and this is very broad, but at the same time, a different way of understanding ecological problems, challenges, and also opportunities. So, like, I would like to give a very small exercise to all of you for the next 10 minutes, maybe. So I will give you 3 topics. Would you like to give me the topics, just, would you like to reflect on just by focusing on India, or you want to keep it global? Shall we just
Global.
global? Okay. And I'll just give the topics. One is deforestation. The other one is urban water crisis. And the third one is floods. All right. So pick any one of these three topics, any one of these three themes, and I just want 4 or 5 bullet points from you. So 4 or 5 key highlights from you on any one of these themes. So, for example, if you decide to reflect on deforestation, so just write 5 key points, that how would you like to understand deforestation, and why do you think that why do you think or what do you think is the root cause of deforestation, and whatever, you can structure it in your own way, right? But of course, 1 point should be, 1 or 2 points should be on why this is happening, how do you explain this particular phenomenon. So that there is something that I would specifically want from you. So other things you can structure, it in your own way, no problem. But one particular thing that you definitely have to address is how do you explain, why do you think, deforestation occurs? So how do you explain the phenomenon? So I want this phenomenal, this explanation on the phenomena from you. How would you explain the phenomenon? And other things you can keep it keep the structure as per your own discretion. No problem with that. So it is 11:13 now. Take 20 minutes. So sorry, take 10 minutes. So I'll ask you to randomly, I will ask you to read or to share or whatever just after 10 minutes. So 11:23. Time starts now. Anyone, each of you just select any one thing and write down 4 or 5 key points on this, but definitely covering how do you understand this phenomena, how are you going to explain this particular phenomena. All right, so just take 10 minutes. Yes. So we're done, all of you? Hmm? I cannot hear you.
Yes, ma'am, I've compiled a few points.
All right, very good. And what about others?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Only Roshan, Pranav, Aditya, this is the most alert group of students. What about others? You are also quite alert, I'm sure, but you were shy in speaking. So please speak, no problem.
Yes, ma'am. I have also completed.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay, very good.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am, done.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. We
So
also.
very good. Okay, Dhruv. Dhruv, would
Yes,
you like
ma'am.
to? Yeah, Dhruv. Manish, very good. So Dhruv, would you like to start with your point? So what is the theme
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you had chosen?
Ma'am, I have prepared my points for deforestation.
Okay, great. So would you like to quickly read your points or just tell us, how
Sure,
you
ma'am.
have described things? Yeah.
Sure, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, according to me, deforestation has its roots to more human population and more human desires. Like due to much of human desires, the deforestation is being caused at a very large extent. And then, as the population is growing and as the technology is increasing and the desires is also like increasing, more number of products and the amount of products are also required at a very large quantity. So this is making the resources very less, and also increasing human population is requiring more land for agriculture as well as for residential purposes. And since the land amount of land on the earth is constant, the forests are cut for this land amount, and industries also require land, so this also is a main cause for the deforestation purpose.
Okay, okay. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
ma'am.
It was quite comprehensive, very good. Who would like to follow? Anyone else has kind of concentrated on deforestation and more
Yes,
or less
ma'am.
covered same points, but some additional points also beyond Dhruv's points. Pranav?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I have
please
also.
go ahead.
Yeah. So, ma'am, according to Dhruv, like, yes, I am in agree with Dhruv that this is because of human desire and comfort. And I have also added like we have the most amount of discussion is done about on this topic, like many discussions and debates and all of this have done, but we have still not get any like concrete idea like how to tackle it. We still have not got any concrete idea. So what I think is that what we can do is like government can allocate in mainly deforestation is due to industries, like on personal level it's very small for farmers and stuff, so that is not matters, but mainly it is industries and large scale factories. So what government can do, government can allocate lands to industries, that you can come here and cut the woods, but after 5 years, and in those 5 years you plant the equal amounts of trees there. So what will happen, that number of trees will not decrease, it will only increase.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, so you can come here to cut the trees after 5 years, and in those 5 years, plant the equal amount of trees there or more.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Pranav, for coming up with an idea of policy solution, how things can be managed directly. Okay, thanks. So, anyone else on deforestation and beyond
Yes,
Dhruv
ma'am.
and Pranav's point? Yes, Sugan.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. I might just have like a different idea as to like about the causes and why it
Uh-huh.
happened. So basically, ma'am, this requires like why do people like why is deforestation happening? Because companies need wood so that they can make stuff out of it and sell it to public, and there's clear profit motive. And in initial years, a few years back, these companies did not have any regulations on them, so they could cut as much trees as possible, because of which they became like very powerful and had a lot of money. And using this money, they now have a lot of lobbying power with the government. We see this happening in US and Australia, where like the companies can basically tell government to like frack as much as they want, or like cut trees they want, or like make coal mines, and have faced no repercussions for that. So what I believe is that primary cause of this is that these companies have a lot of unchecked power, and that power they can use to manipulate what they want the government to do.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sugandh. Snigdha?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, basically, till the onset of human civilization, a lot of paper has been used. So it's time to reuse those papers, and this leads to the question why deforestation is bad. It is bad because it reduces the level of oxygen in the atmosphere for obvious reasons. It leads to loss of habitat for animals, which is not good because we need to cohabitate. And it leads to the climate change due to the fact that plants do transpiration. Also, now how to how to reverse the effect of deforestation. It can be reversed by following 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycling, especially of papers. And deforestation can also be reversed by simple consciousness, that is planting each one of us planting 1 tree per year. The small
Mhm.
effort can cause a huge change and difference.
All right, thank you, thank you. Any final, any few final additional points on deforestation?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, like deforestation can occur in a series of ways, like when roads are built to villages for accessing urban commodities and transportation of goods. Like, yeah, the road development itself will cause some amount of deforestation, but this will follow logging at previously inaccessible sites.
Okay.
And these logged areas will become like a place for settlers who will clear the remaining forest land for infrastructure and agriculture. Like this series continues, and more
Mhm.
amount of land is deforested, like is given for deforestation.
Okay, okay. Yes, thanks, Pevin. Aditya, you wanted to
Yes. Actually, I think that increasing population is one of the major reasons also, because like land is a limited quantity. So if we wish to use more amount of land, then something has to be sacrificed, and the forests are being done. So because new land cannot be created, right? That's a very
Mhm.
so that's the one of the prime reasons I feel.
Thank you, thanks all of you. So before I go into the other two topics, which I think I'll be doing tomorrow, again, a very small exercise for all of you, which you have to do today after the class is over. If you are able to spend some time, maybe 15 minutes or so. Now, very interesting couple of reflections, on deforestation, as all of you have mentioned. And what I can understand from your perspectives is that to a great extent, all of you think that it is population that is actually causing a whole lot of pressure on the ecological resource base. Now, there is no doubt about that it is absolutely true that, population, of course, it exerts pressure on, ecology, because as Aditya has mentioned, that land, it cannot expand. So land cannot expand, and the resources are finite. So it's very difficult. It is getting difficult. So sustainability is getting compromised because we are having infinite drive towards this finite resources. Right. So somebody also, I think, Dhruv mentioned about desires, human desires. So now I would just like to, try to imply, or rather not imply, sorry, I would try to apply, I would try to implement the political ecology lens into this. And to an extent, you have been able to touch upon it because you have talked about capitalism. You have, for example, Sugandh and Pranav, both of you have, to a great extent, emphasized on the role of big private lobbies and corporations. Right. So, why do you think deforestation actually, takes place? For example, let us concentrate on India. Now, why am I trying to make you concentrate on India? Because again, unfortunately, I have more data and information so far as the Indian context is concerned, but some data also in terms of Latin America, Amazon, Brazilian forests, etc. All right. Now, for example, let me just ask you a simple question. So why do you think, and when do you think deforestation started? So now when I'm asking this question, I'm asking you to concentrate on the question of scale. What the scale means, all of you know, right? Scale. So the scalar impact. So from when did deforestation start taking place with whole lot of intensity and at scales within the Indian subcontinent? What is the answer? Quickly.
Ma'am, during the British period.
Absolutely, Kaushiki.
Ma'am, after industrialization.
Industrial Revolution.
After industrialization, industrial revolution, British period. So what is the common point here? But before that, now before the coming of the British, we did not have deforestation or what? There was no deforestation or what before the coming of the British?
Probably it wasn't at an unsustainable scale.
Yes, and like no, maybe like bits and pieces of land or forest got deforested, but even also whether we will be able to, we should be using deforestation as a process or not is questionable. So yes, there is no doubt about the fact that in India at scales deforestation started with the British period. So and you also have included industrialization, British period. So what is the common point? So the common point is colonialism or colonial capitalism within the Indian context, and like that, if you same thing, if you just take a look into the process through which deforestation occurred in India, the process is more or less similar. So far, Africa is concerned, parts of Latin America is concerned, and more or less the entire global South is concerned, which was largely colonized by the European powers. So in India, we had the British power, so colonialism or colonial capitalism, right? So what happened? So for example, Snigdha pointed out the results of deforestation. And when he talked about the results of deforestation, absolutely, he rightly mentioned that deforestation leads to climate change, and deforestation, causes several other, how do I say, like, it impacts the equilibrium, and it, lot of other problems like the increase of CO2 and global emission also become unchecked, because large scale deforestation also impacts on this CO2 balance and this kind of things. So climate change, most importantly, and global warming. But what other things actually happen through deforestation? And also you have mentioned about the loss of wildlife and loss of trees and forest habitats and those kind of things. But we have not touched upon a particular point, which I think now you can understand if you just take a look at the chat box, and if you take a look into colonialism or colonial capitalism, what do you think? Why did the British deforest? Why did the British, kind of cut down trees? Why did the British initiated deforestation at such a scale? Why did they want to do that? What was the reason behind deforestation?
More farming for opium.
More farming for opium. Okay, so plantation of cash crops, right?
To build factories, roads, railways to connect the.
All right. Yes, absolutely. Infrastructure. Fabian pointed out about infrastructures, roads, railways. Yes, Kaushiki, you wanted to add something?
Yes, ma'am, that only. The railway lines were laid down at the British era, so for that huge amount of deforestation had happened that time.
Absolutely. So if you read different books by very renowned environmental historians, people like Mahesh Rangarajan, Richard Grove, you will be amused to see that how, or the amount of deforestation actually that took place between 1850 and 1900, just within a span of 50 years. And what was happening during these 50 years in India? So in 1853, the first railway it moved between Bombay and Thane, and during the period of Dalhousie, and the railway construction project was initiated. And between 1850s and 1900, within just a span of roughly 50 years, 70% of the country was covered by railway tracks. So it happened at a very fast pace. Because, and why the British actually constructed railways? Why did the British construct railways?
For industrialization purposes.
And most importantly, this is
to improve the communication.
Yes, so in our language we call it drain of wealth. So can you explain drain of wealth? Would you apply your common sense to kind of address this technical term, drain of wealth? Yeah, so again, my clue is drain of wealth from the colony to the mother country. Yes, Shahu, Chirag.
Yeah, I was also saying that they are taking all money from India to Britain.
Yes, so the railways for the supply of raw materials to Britain, and the export or the finished goods actually coming to India from Britain, right? So the supply of raw materials and then then getting finished goods at a very high price, right? And how could they actually kind of get this procure these raw materials from remote villages, and how then remote villages could get connected through the railways, right? So it happened also through the ocean or the water route, and that is why we have number of port cities including Mumbai and Kolkata, and also it happened at a very large scale through railways. And not only that, there are several other aspects to this, because the British also wanted the capitalist industrialist lobby to get money from the railway project, so that India was their space for investment, the space for investment. So the British government was actually providing opportunities to the British capitalists, the British private industrial lobby, to invest in this country so that they can actually get huge returns on investment. And whether I don't know whether you remember or not, in your school textbooks, I'm sure it was written that there were several guarantee acts which were passed. So the idea was that India actually got this railway project against huge amount of money, capital, and so India had to pay loans to the money that was invested, or rather to the capital that was invested by this private capital. Until that we are paying, you can't even imagine. So we are still in the debt trap. And till date, we are actually kind of, covering those fines or those interest on the loans that we had actually taken. So from that time, so it's the legacy is still continuing. So anyway, I'll not go into that economic part of it right now, but more to the ecological part of it. So one can understand and one can find a very direct correlation between the construction of railways and the deforestation. The deforestation, so far as our Indian forests are concerned, for example, large parts of forest in eastern India, huge parts of forest in the northern part, for example. So and like within 50 years, and then the deforestation also continued. It's not that it just stopped, but it also continued at a further aggravated scale. Now, who suffered the most? What do you think? Of course, the impact of deforestation is climate change. Today also, we know that, how due to so much of deforestation, the climate balance is getting disrupted. But who suffered? With the assurance of the era of deforestation in India, or for that matter, other global, countries of the global south, who suffered the most?
Forest locals and tribals, and people who were people who were originally dwelling in those forests and whose livelihoods were based on those forests, they suffered the most.
Absolutely. So ecosystem dependent people. So forest dependent communities, right? Forest dependent communities. You just take a look into the data, find out from our census. Even today, how many people inhabit our forest lands? Huge amount of people. And many people, coming from different ethnic minorities and tribal origins. We have the Santhals, we have the Kols, we have the Mundas, we have the Bhils, we have the Kumars, and so many people, different types of people coming from this or having tribal affiliation, and also SCs, STs, different ethnic minorities, the huge set of population, right? And what happened when immediately this deforestation? So how did the British start deforestation in our country? What do you think? They just started, cutting forest. Because if they would have just started cutting forest, then there would have been huge criticisms against them. But they did not do it in that way. So unfortunately, they came up with a tactics. Not tactics, but a strategy. They came up with a very planned strategy, and they said that and if you see the documents, archival documents, if you see colonial, or if you consult the colonial reports, you will see that they use a particular term called scientific forestry. Scientific forestry. And Dietrich Brandes was the first. He was not British, but he was German. So he was the first German forester who was brought here, a contract was signed with the British East India Company, between British East India Company and Dietrich Bandis, and then after the era of company rule ended, and direct British rule started under the Queen. So all those political historical events. But anyway, what is most important is that Dietrich Bandis had a contract with the British, and the British brought him here. And the first FRI is Forest Research Institute. The first FRI was established where? Any guess? It's a beautiful place. You can go sometime.
Dehradun.
Dehradun, absolutely. So in Dehradun, the first Forest Research Institute was inaugurated, and Dietrich Bandis was the main propounder of this entire policy, and what he came up with is known as this policy of scientific forestry. But from the name, can you even imagine that they were actually trying to cut down trees, and they're actually trying to promote and facilitate deforestation through this otherwise very sophisticated terminology called scientific forestry. And with this, you can also understand that how these capitalist corporations and these profit-seeking organizations, even including the East India Company, and till date there are several other organizations, who would actually try to legitimize their otherwise negative acts and activities under the garb of these kind of terminologies, which can confuse us, because we immediately fall into the trap of this kind of terminologies, because we think that they are good measures. And immediately I can think of number of other terminologies that are being used, that have been floated, and we have fallen trapped to it. Things like smart city, eco-friendly something, housing, for example, conservation. But unfortunately, it is just the opposite of conservation that actually takes place. And when we are fed with the ecological discourse, or rather when we are fed with the discourse of ecological change or ecological crisis, big things like climate change, global warming, emission, all these things are portrayed and projected in such a way, or packaged in such a way, that we just start understanding that it is just population, or it is just the land use, land cover change, which are big problems. No, they are problems, they are patterns, that's fine. But unfortunately, in a very deliberate way, the policymakers, the statecraft, in alliance with these big transnational corporations, now we are into this globalized world, so no more British East India Company, but we have like all these big transnational corporations. So the state, aligned with these transnational corporations, they actually float strategies, they devise strategies through which we fail to understand the crux of the problem. That deforestation is actually an outcome or the result of a very shrewd and a skewed political economic mode of production. We fail to realize that, because deforestation is not it is not projected in our textbooks or in our mainstream source materials in this very way. But then if you push yourself, if you try to make, or if you are able to make the connections and the links, you can understand the subsurface level causes behind this kind of phenomena like deforestation. So what do you need to do? You need to map actors. Who are the actors who are in this game? What is the resource? State, for example, big corporations and industrial lobbies, the tribals, ethnic minorities of a particular country. So you just put different actors who are involved in the story of deforestation or afforestation, or with the story of forest for that matter. And you see the role of these actors. So the role of these actors in facilitating the process and the implications of the process on each of these actors. Getting it? And you need to map the actors, you need to see the networks, you need to find out their roles, you need to figure out their responsibilities, and you need to figure out whether they have been beneficiaries or non-beneficiaries to this whole thing. That is the role of political ecology. It includes and infiltrates and injects politics within the understanding of ecology or ecological crisis or ecological challenges for that matter. So when we are analyzing and discussing any ecological issue, whether deforestation or floods or urban water crisis or pollution or whatever, or loss of biodiversity or waste, solid waste or wastewater, whatever we are discussing, any ecological issue. And so how should we understand that ecological issue? That any particular ecological issue is not separate from politics. That politics and ecology are inseparable is the very idea that political ecology, kind of help us to understand with. So with this, I think I will be actually moving into the core tenets of political ecology, and also some words you have to remember because they are honestly brilliant pieces of work. And for example, I think I talked about John Bellamy Foster's book called Ecology Against Capitalism. And in that particular book, John Bellamy Foster has just written 10 to 15 pages on climate change. And if you see the literature, there are like thousands and thousands and thousand pages of literature on climate change, on this quantitative data sets, on so many things, so much of technical discussions on climate change. But in those 10 to 15 pages, the kind of things that John Bellamy Foster had covered, you can immediately understand that it is, and the most important thing is the particular way our economy has been structured. That we are, in this capitalist world order, that unfortunately decisions are being made, choices are made by very few people, and that unfortunately the state has no other option but to support these very few people, because when it's elections or several other things, it's these people on whom this community, on whom the state relies upon. Right, so you can understand that how it's not the typical population and ecological crisis correlation theory that actually works. I am not saying that population is not an important variable. Yes, it is. But if we see the population as the only variable, then we are in problem. Getting it? So political ecology is that particular lens which help us to understand, or rather I would say which help us to contextualize the ecological crisis within particular time periods, taking into concern the local geographies, and most importantly that political economic process or mode of production in which people actually live. Political economic mode of production that people have encountered during particular phases of time in particular geographies, and also the political economic mode of production that we are facing now in again particular geographies. And not only that, it also generates future repercussion or implications. So what do you think, Kaushiki? That the kind of implications that the tribal people had, or not only tribal people, but rather the entire country had during the British time, since the British time, so far as deforestation is concerned, do you think that it is the implications are still continuing?
Yes, ma'am. Of course, it's still continuing because it couldn't have been brought to a halt. Many rules and regulations have been imposed, but still, we couldn't prevent it to the grassroots level. I think so.
Yes, and also exactly. So you have brought out again a very important point. So how can we understand this? Let us take a look into all the forest policies. So the first Forest Act was, the first Forest Act was implemented in 1850s, and after that, number of forest laws actually have been implemented. In post-independence India, forest laws and forest acts have been implemented in 1970s, 1990s, and then in 2006, the most radical Forest Rights Act (FRA) was implemented in 2006. And if you see the forest laws or the forest acts of post-independent India, not the FRA one. FRA again is a different issue. I'll cover it maybe sometime later. But if you take a look into the post-colonial or post-independent Indian Forest Rights Act, you will see, very unfortunately, it is just an imitation of the colonial laws and colonial acts. So maybe the British, they have gone and India has become a sovereign country, but very, very unfortunately, the technological practices, the laws and rules, the litigation, several other things have just continued. Because, to a great extent, again, capitalism has advanced from one mode to the other. And the implications have been extremely deleterious. These implications have been very, very severe on both nature and native. So political ecology, I think, is that particular perspective or lens of analysis which help us to understand inequity, injustice, economics, and politics that are all absolutely enmeshed and embedded within the larger story of ecology. Is it clear? Any question from any one of you?
Yes, ma'am. Just to ensure that I'm understanding the crux of this correctly. So if I were to sum up what has been said, is it that when there are people who are creating policies, they might have vested interests. They might portray or sugarcoat policies as if they are good for the environment, they are very ecological. But we need a political, ecological lens to read between the lines and actually understand who are the beneficiaries who will be harmed by these policies, and then take an informed decision as a whole.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have absolutely understood it correctly. I'm very happy that, it's not easy. Political ecology is very difficult, because we are struggling with this domain since the last 10 years. And you ask any great political ecologist to actually come to a class, for 1 hour and give a lecture on political ecology, he or she can, give a very good presentation, but then you will not be able to understand what he or she has said. It's not easy, because there is so much of literature available here. But what is most important is that, you need to understand the crux of it. And I'm very happy you have absolutely, I think, understood the crux of it. So I think we'll continue tomorrow. And I have already uploaded, files in our readings, so far as this particular topic is concerned, political ecology. So I would definitely request you to start going through, this, not everything, definitely, not everything, but if possible, the 2 books I have uploaded. So please go through the introduction. So please go through the introduction, just the introductory chapter of those 2 books. That itself is huge, I know, but just the introduction. Take a very detailed look into the introduction. And I think there are 2 video links, 2 or 3 video links maybe. So maybe right now, don't go through that. Let me complete tomorrow. Let me complete tomorrow's class, and then I will tell you what you will do, how you will do. Those things I will tell you. You don't need to worry. But the readings are already there, because the literature again is vast. So, but I made those specific selections because I can tell you the selection logic. So tomorrow I will be spending 7 to 10 minutes on these readings, and I will tell you and how you can actually or how you should be accessing this material. These are all in the readings folder there. But you just right now, maybe you can start looking into maybe you can see the video lecture by Page and my video lecture on political ecology of water, but don't see the other one. Don't see the urban political ecology lecture. No, don't see those 2. But just if you get the time today, just watch the video by Dr. Page on critical political ecology, and my video lecture of 30 minutes maybe on political ecology of water. Why I'm saying this? Because I have covered what is political ecology in the first portion of the lecture. and I think it's pretty lucid, so it should not be a problem. Now, who would be the two volunteers for today's class?
Ma'am, Pranav
May I
Mehrotra.
Dhruv
Pranav
and
Mehrotra. Pranav.
Dhruv and Pranav Mehrotra.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Shauradip, can you please take a note? Dhruv
Yes.
and Pranav.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
yes, so before we just finish today's session or class, I think I have 1 more minute left. So please be really sincere with class highlights, because I have received 1 or 2 class highlights document maybe which are not good quality ones, and you know that. So so I'm expecting the documents to be of high quality, because all your friends will be accessing those, and of course I think I'll be keeping 10 marks on this. So be a bit sincere on this, and it's not that you just have to reflect on whatever have been discussed. You have the freedom to add on it too. Of course, I am expecting that the 2 volunteers who are compiling the class details, they would also add their own interpretation to it. So please go ahead. I don't need, you don't need to come up with huge sets of notes, no. But the 1 or 2 key points where you want to add 1 or 2 key sentences, which resonate to what has been kind of discussed in class, please go ahead and do that, because it needs to be original. So I want to see, originality in it. And of course, you need to be a bit creative on the structure, on how you are actually kind of structuring it. So in terms of structure, in terms of content, and in terms of its own reflection, your own reflections. So originality and creativity has to be there, because I have a lot of plans which I'll share with you later, and let's see. But right now, put your best efforts on the highlights document, and all the very best you'll be able to do. I'm very sure of the fact. So, and finally, before leaving, there are 2 more topics which we have not discussed today: floods, and the other one was urban water crisis. So I will request the students who took up either floods or urban water crisis, now with this political ecology thing in mind, would you like to also kind of revise your draft a bit? And tomorrow we will have some time, we will definitely, maybe I'll start with this discussion itself, because students discussing about deforestation, they mention a whole lot of important things, and then I tried to kind of put the political ecological lens on it. So now I would request students who have written on floods and urban water to again superimpose the political ecological lens, and see whether you are able to revise your draft or not. Is the task clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Clear to all of you? So people who are
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. So I'll meet you tomorrow at 8. All the very best, and see you tomorrow. Have a nice
Thank
week.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. And may I know the deadline for us for submitting?
Yes. So Saturday?
Okay, ma'am.
Saturday night. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.